Okay, so here we are then on episode number 6. Now this episode, guys, that we're bringing you today is titled Finding Your Inner Power. And I think again, hence why we obviously made the title. It's a very good sort of like thing to look into and to sort of like explain exactly what we mean by this. I'll let Scott give his more detailed look at this. But for me, first of all, like the thing I want you to think about when we're talking about this subject really is really what wakes you up in the morning and the things, the reason you wake up in the morning. So try and think of your inner power as, you know, everybody has an inner power. Everybody has a purpose in life, if you want to put it a different way. And it's trying to find that purpose, trying to find that thing that sparks you, and trying to find the reason that you wake up in the morning. And what I mean by wake up in the morning really is, you know, what makes you want to get up in the morning. And I don't mean because you have work, you know, like I don't mean because you have to do something. I mean the reasons you actually want to wake up in the morning. You know, I think that's like, for me, that is the most important sort of way to look at this, because there's a lot of people a lot of the time that will do things because they feel they have to do them. But when you start to do things because you want to do them, you will have a much more enjoyable time and an enjoyable life as such.
Right, absolutely. I think this episode definitely touches on, as usual, a lot of the things that we've spoken about in the past. But really, as you've said so far, you know, the most important correlation that I want to explore today is that between passion and purpose, right? Because you mentioned these two things: purpose, what that individual wants to accomplish, what you believe and it's almost beyond just accomplishment. It's almost like a divine sense of duty, right? What you believe is the truest reflection of who you are as a person when all of your capabilities reach their maximum potential. And that's can be something in your profession, in your your hobby sphere, and even in your family, right? Purpose is loosely defined, but it is that sense of striving towards achievement. Combining that with passion, right? The driving force that causes you to push relentlessly towards that thing. Not just waking up in the morning to accomplish, to fulfill your obligations, but feeling that flame of excitement, of drive, of desire to achieve something, to accomplish a vision, right? And to enjoy everything you do along the way. For me, that is how I would define passion. And I think that these two concepts merge together, passion and purpose, to create one's inner power, right? To have a direction to push yourself towards, and to have a driving force and energy that catalyzes that momentum, if you understand me.
Yeah, for sure. I think as well, Scott, like with this, a lot of the time, people may find themselves in a position where they actually don't know. You know, they actually don't. They you hear it before, don't you? Like you hear it that we speak to people where they're like, I don't really know what my purpose is. I don't know what my, what I should be doing as such. People sometimes are lost, and I feel like it's people that haven't explored enough, and people that haven't maybe thought about things enough or tried different avenues of their life. You know, like, not to categorize things too much, but you're sort of like 2.4 children scenario. That's something that people, where am I trying to go with this? Like with that sort of scenario of like a 2.4 children sort of lifestyle, people think that that's what they should do. They think that that's what people do, so they do that. And then they think, oh, you get married, so I'll get married. Or they think, oh, people have children, have a dog, so I'm going to have children, have a dog. And before you know it, they go into this lifestyle of, they think that there's a certain route to take, when actually, when you go and explore your life a little bit more and try and find a purpose, as opposed to just following the routine that everybody else takes, then you start to find yourself a bit more. Have I lost track there, or do you get what I'm saying?
No, I fully get what you're saying, and I think it's a very complicated one for people, because it's quite an ephemeral concept, and I feel that a lot of people, and rightly so, don't feel that they have time to afford to such a luxury as to sit back and think, what's my purpose? Where, like, just from a young age, you go into school with the aim to educate yourself, but ultimately to kind of compartmentalize you down to a certain set of skills that can then be applied to the workforce, right? And this is how society works. And inevitably you find yourself, you graduate in high school with your A levels in whatever subjects, you go off to uni, okay, we're getting a little bit closer, and we get a little bit closer, and then inevitably you jump into the workforce. But in all of that time, where it seems as if you're presented with a hell of a lot of options, you honestly don't have a huge amount at all, because time moves so fast. You're under so much pressure all the time to make these decisions, whilst your brain is still developing. Your understanding of your place in society is developing. This dependent on culture and where you happen to live and grow up. But and ultimately you just find yourself, as you say, in somewhat of a life trap, right? Your only choice now is to kind of follow the societal mold, because it's frightening to think otherwise, because you haven't had a moment to think that something else could be different. And what that then does is, unfortunately, it massively restricts the amount of energy that one can give to thinking about what they really need, who they really are, right? And it's inconvenient to do that, because it starts to challenge the mold of the universe that you have been conditioned to understand as normal, right? So I think this is the major obstacle for people, and with the concept of purpose. And then, there is that a little bit of that, negative stereotype about, oh, well, I don't have time to waste finding my purpose. Like, I got to pay the bills, I gotta deal with the real world. The real world doesn't care about what I think, and in that, whilst there are some elements of that are true, people lose their individuality a little bit. And then it becomes very difficult to backtrack and start asking these questions, right? So I think that's the major block for most people, is just the speed of society.
Yeah. And I think as well, like when you're looking at that process, I guess people don't know what they're looking for. Like, so you've got to try and try more things, explore the world more, and explore yourself more, to try and find your purpose. And also, I guess, if someone's still listening to this thinking, still don't know what you're on about, and then don't force it, like, just enjoy things. And, obviously, like with the training side of things, what we do, we prep food in the morning. That's a massive part of our day. We train, we plan our sessions, we plan when we're going to train. All these things that you do, they start to put your life into a position, and then you'll start to find what is important to you a little bit more. One of the first things I think that I want to go into here as well is when we're looking at the way that you can structure your life and your day, is how you start your morning. Like, I've said this before, but I'm a massive fan of having a morning routine. And I actually challenged my staff the other day at the gym, saying, like, what is your morning routine? And, a lot of the time when you ask someone, what's your morning routine? A lot of people, they sort of like feel a bit like, what do you mean? Like, and it's a bit like a lot of people are set back thinking, I get up, I go toilet and have my breakfast. Like, do you know what I mean? And as much as that can work for people, and as much as they probably see that as their morning routine, if you want to be successful, and if you want to really drive your days forward and, supercharge your day and start it off properly, then in my opinion, you need a solid morning routine. Because if you haven't got something that is your go-to morning routine, and then you have nothing to compare your good and bad days from. And what I mean by that really is exactly how you wake up. Like, for the people that may be still listening now thinking, what do you mean by a morning routine? Like, for example, in the morning at the moment, me and Sarah have sort of like changed our routine up a little bit, where we'll get up, we'll do some like very light stretching, and then we'll do some meditation, and then we'll do some affirmations, and then we'll do some goal settings, and then we'll dance around the room for 5 minutes listening to some crazy music. I don't know if you've seen it on my Instagram the other day. But you know, that's our morning at the minute. We've changed it recently, and it's really benefited us. And that's what I mean to people when I say about having a morning routine. You know, if you start your day off by just rolling out of bed, having a poo, you know, sitting on your phone, flicking through Instagram, absorbing people's shit before you're starting your day, and then that's the thing. It's, you know, you're starting your day in a negative way, and it's going to reflect onto the rest of it.
Right, and it sets the tone for the momentum that carries you through the day, and as well as it was we think we've mentioned this a few times in previous episodes, right? The structure enables you to, when you do look back and inevitably reflect on how things have gone over the, you know, what you've experienced, what you've felt. It's very easy to look back on days that are quite well structured and identify failures and identify successes when, you know, when it's nicely modulated. Whereas if your day is just a string of chaos, it's very hard to identify how you were showing up in that moment, if you understand me. What I wanted to kind of move on to a little bit when it comes to the idea of purpose as well, right? We've very much mentioned the concept of time and the rigors of kind of modern society, taking away a little bit from one's ability to discern, you know, why am I really here? What is my mission, right? And inevitably that also gets tied up with one's career, because you have to provide for yourself and your family, right? But oftentimes what you truly want to achieve may not align with that career, right? So this goes back to what we were discussing in previous episodes about the individual's why, right? That central force that drives you to wake up in the morning, to, you know, direct energy and momentum towards the things that you do. When you start to notice that process is becoming forced, it's more of a result of habit than it is a result of organic, you know, desire. For me, that is the biggest indicator that something is missing, right? And yes, you know, discipline is necessary. You don't feel good every day. No matter what you do for a living, no matter what you do as a person, it is what it is, right? But when you feel that chronic malaise, that lack of drive, that lack of that apathy, right, to do what you do every day, for me, that is the key indicator that you are on a divergent path from where you need to be, right? A phrase that I've always used both in training and in life is apathy is death. As soon as you start to find yourself chronically not caring about something, it's wrong. And you need to start seriously introspecting, you know, why that isn't resonating with you anymore, and what it is about, you know, an alternate reality that may be more appealing to you, right? And this is where you start to create change.
I think obviously, like you say, there has to be, on the discipline side of things, there has to be some things that you just do because you need to do them. But like you say, the overall perspective is that can't be how you live. Like, and what I mean by that, breaking it down, is like, for example, the amount of food that sometimes that we have to eat, and you just go, I just need to eat it. That's it. You know, that's the discipline side. That's it's just got to happen. Sometimes, you know, people think, like for me, sometimes people think that I love every training session, and they're fucking wrong. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes I don't want to train. Like sometimes, you know, people just think, oh yeah, but you own a gym and you're a coach and an athlete, so you obviously enjoy it all the time. That's not the case. Like, and I think it's important to be honest with people, be honest for people in that situation, because it's not easy. And that's where that's what I'm saying about the discipline side of it. That's where that comes into it, because sometimes you just have to keep moving forward, and you just have to keep doing that, you know, monotonous attitude.
Right. But with that, right, and I love eating. Eating is the absolute perfect example, because I think anyone who is involved in strength sport, you know what it takes. It's not fun to be pounding down thousands of calories day in and day out, no matter how much you like to eat, no matter how much you're committed, right? But even, and believe me, I share your sentiment when it comes to the, right, I just got to eat. And, by all means, sometimes it comes to that. But for me, there is still that like fierce pride that underpins the desire to sit and eat, which is like, why I'm eating? Because I want to get stronger. I know my body needs this food. I need to recover. I want to make my body this force in nature that I perceive in my mind through my training, through my diet. And this is the way to do that. And even though this one meal sucks, right, the overarching idea, the energy behind it is authentic to what I need and what I want, right? When we refer back to my previous example, this kind of chronic apathy, you're not just going to have that with one meal. You're going to have it with every meal. You're not even going to conceive of the idea of eating more food because it's overwhelming, because the grand goal has blinked out of existence. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if eating won't accomplish anything, because I don't care if I'm 100 kilos and jacked, or if I'm 85 kilos, because I don't care, right? I've lost that fire that pushed me to do that thing, right?
Yeah. Agree.
And this truly applies like to every situation that you can apply the context of purpose to, right? Like, yeah, you can slave away and maybe eat your meals for another year. You can work on that job that you despise for another year, as long as you have something behind it that drives it, right? There's a quote that I absolutely love. I think it's Teddy Roosevelt. A man with a why can bear almost any how, right? You can bear discipline, you can bear suffering if there's a driving force behind it, right? And what I think underpins that driving force is passion. It's passion, right? The passion that gets you up to go to work that crap job is the love that you have for your family and the desire to provide for them, right? The passion that gets me into the gym on days where I feel like crap is my overarching love for the sport and my desire to be better, right? As soon as that passion blinks out of existence, though, so does the means of bearing all the rest of the shit, right? And that is why I tie passion to purpose. They are inextricably intertwined.
I like it. And that's where obviously like the rituals help, don't they? Because the rituals on the harder days or on the harder moments, the rituals keep you on track, and keep you moving forward in that direction. Because as long as you trust the process, you know that all these little things we have in place will keep moving you forward. But on the whole, like, moving forward and stuff, I think one of the other areas that I think is really important to sort of take into account is like to work on your fears. So, often people, we're talking about it now, but we're talking about the thing that drives you, the thing that moves you forward. But I think it's also important to look at the things that stop you. So the obstacles and the fears you may have of, and it might come down to like, fear of failure, like whatever you want, however you want to put it. Like you could look at this in many aspects as well, whether it's in business, training, life, whatever. But everybody has these little fears that they suffer with. Some are outspoken, some are not. Some are just installed in you as well. Some are really deep installed that you don't even know they're there because you're used to seeing them all the time. So yeah, I think it's important that we are honest with ourselves and we work towards the fears to overcome them so we can then continue to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, if you guys want to learn a little bit more about this topic in depth, head back to, I think it was episode 3 when we touched on this in depth. But I really like the variance that you described with regards to like blocks or fears, because that's exactly how they manifest. They can be small roadblocks that are just simple assumptions or limiting beliefs that are small contingents of much larger attachments that you have, or they can be overwhelming underpinning aspects of your personality that, as you say, you may not be aware of. They are unconscious. So the goal is it's what I call emotional housekeeping, right? You're you're always, it's like, you live in your mind, right? Just like you live in your house. You're not going to let your house get full of crap and clutter all the time. It's not a fun place to live, right?
Yeah.
You want to tidy, you want to pay attention to those little things to make sure that they don't accumulate. And you do this through awareness, which is what we talk about in episode 1, right? But one of the tactics that I use personally, and I use, in my own practice with clients, is, when you're dealing with someone or yourself in the moment, encountering an obstacle or a block, right? A very simple thing you can do is refer to the past, right? And you ask that individual, or you ask yourself respectively, okay, where have I seen this before, right? So it gives that person a chance in retrospect to, return to that time where they've encountered this, right? If they've overcome it in the past, or they've shown up in a certain way, you ask them then, what was it about you in that moment that enabled you to overcome this obstacle, right? And inevitably that gives that person a chance to think, okay, hold on, I have actually overcome this before, and I have overcome things like this before, right? So perhaps this shouldn't be so frightening in this moment. And it also gives you, with them, a chance to look at it and say, hey man, I actually was pretty courageous in that moment. I was actually able to confront this firsthand, right? So that can then embolden you in the moment to challenge these things, in the present day. Like an example I would give, if I could, from my own past, right? So lockdown, I think a lot of people will relate when they say it sucks. Mentally and emotionally, physically, it all sucks, right? I really struggled with the first lockdown in November. That was my first lockdown. I really struggled to get through the day, really struggled to find motivation and training, not something that I am familiar with. So with this lockdown, I have certainly encountered that again, right? And I thought to myself, like, you made it through the the first or second lockdown. You made it through. You managed to train, you managed to eat, you managed to come out of that just as strong, if not stronger, right? So what was it about you then that emboldened this resilience, that enabled you to fight, enabled you to keep going, right? And the conclusion that I came to was, on a number of levels, emotionally, I held on to the idea that, I am a survivor, I am a fighter, I don't give up, and I don't let stupid crap take the things that matter the most to me away from me, right? I'm not going to let it happen. Simple as that, right? Second, on a more practical level, I realized, like, one of the things I did was I tried to make each day count, right? I tried not to just piss my days away and count down to that inevitable end. And I tried to find something in each day to count, whether it be in business, a great session with a client, whether it be training, whether it be a nice phone call with my girlfriend, or my family, something from that day that mattered to me, right? That's what I did. So I was like, God damn, if I got to go through this shit again, and I got to do it for twice, 3 times as long, you best believe I'm going to apply this to myself. And I'm going to do that because I respect myself enough to do that, right? And that was, I think, what enabled me to kind of keep going, to stop and to try and apply that before I got too deep into the negativity of it.
Yeah, I think in those situations as well, it's so, like, I guess it's hard to not just fold into how everyone else feels, and you've got to stay in tune with you and what you're able to do. Because I think so often we can listen to other people and, get swayed into their way of thinking. But at the end of the day, you have to, it's about remembering what makes you stand out and what brings you to the table every day, as opposed to, how everyone else is feeling everything, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
The last thing I've got on here then, really, that I made note of before as well, was, and it rolls into exactly what you're saying, really, but it's about making it emotional. Now, obviously, we could look at this on many different levels, but let's try and bring it to more training. actually, because I know we talk about mindset and life a lot, don't we? But let's just finish it off with that sort of like, so making it emotional with training, like, so for example, using a little example, actually, like, I've got Worlds coming up this year, right? Last year it got cancelled. And what sort of, like, I'm asking myself this question as I'm saying it, to be honest, but like, what sort of things can keep me focused on this, this year coming up? Because we got last year taken away from us. But for me, really, right now, it's about, so the other day I had a big day, or big afternoon, should I say, of mapping out all the dates I've got coming up this year on my calendar, the events I've got coming up in my training cycles. And then I guess I had a little, like, a reflection of what it means to me and what I want to do and why I want to be there. And for me, obviously, because I've gone up to 105s this year in Worlds, the last 2019's Worlds I was a 90 athlete. Now I'm a 105 athlete. For me, the big emotional attachment is I don't want to go up this weight category and be a number. Do you know what I mean? And that's where, like, the emotional attachment, I love that. I'm sure you know what I mean by this, but I love that feeling inside where you really think deep into something and you visualize things and you imagine you're there and you actually get excited, like you're in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And for me, that's what I like to do, because it makes you emotionally attached to your direction, and you have more reason behind it to work harder. It's like this week I've now started programming myself, and I've not programmed myself for quite a while, really, but I've now again looked at my program and I've really gone deep into understanding where I'm going with things. And again, that's another thing for me to get emotionally attached to what I'm doing. And I just find that, like, really powerful.
Right. I mean, I think that it's a great example because it ties into everything that we've talked about earlier, right? The emotional attachment is one of the manifestations of that passion, right? That intrinsic, subconscious drive that you have, associated with this practice, right? With strongman, and now more specifically with you being a competitive athlete, right? And then once it's almost like you've laid the foundation of this emotional pyramid, right? Which is, your drive, strongman, bottom of the pyramid, right? You go up, it gets more specific. We have this particular comp. And then you start adding little pieces to that. You have individual experiences like, potential past failures that you want to kind of avenge, right?
Yeah.
You've gone into a new weight class. So you're treading on unbroken ground now, right? You're taking somewhat of a risk as well. Right. And all of that builds itself up until you get to the top of the pyramid, which for me is just a visualization. You're imagining yourself there in the moment, experiencing what you perceive to be, the thrills, the excitement, the intensity of being on the stage, being in the arena. Right. And it's amazing, and yeah, for sure I can relate to it. It's really like you transcend time. You live both in the moment with all the preparation that you do, but there is a part of you that lives in the future in that moment that you've attached to that day, that event, that competition. And it's crazy how much that can push you, right?
Yeah. And how powerful it becomes.
Right. And you know what I think is really significant about that as well is that it is a risk because you attach so much to it. So there is almost that, avoiding failure aspect to it as well, which is that you've staked a lot of, emotional investment on that moment. So it builds up that, that explosion of energy so that when it's time for, to fight or flee, you best believe you're going to be fighting.
Yeah, for sure. I think as well, though, with that situation, you have to have a little bit of experience and a lot of imagination, so the experience of being in that situation, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be at that level, but being in an experience that makes you feel under that pressure and that excitement, like a competition. So, for me, like, yeah, so I always think of that feeling of people watching you and you doing well and you smashing the event. And, visualize the event, visualize what you're going to do, what you're going to be wearing and everything. I like to really find detail into things. And then obviously you've then got to use your imagination of imagining this new event where I'm going to, you know what I mean? Where you're then on that whole, adventure of actually, doing well at this event. So it's trying to mix the two together, isn't it? And to try and be, like use your experience from before and use your imagination going forward.
Right. And I love that, because it's a perfect way to conclude, actually, because you've done, both halves of the puzzle from earlier, right? You've the moment in the past are these references, right, that build the trajectory that you're on, the purpose, right? The moment in the future is the catalyst of your passion, right? It's the moment where all that energy, that desire, that drive catalyzes into a real thing, an actual moment, an event in real time, right? It translates from all this visualization, all this expectation into something that happens in the moment. So combining those things together, I think, creates an unstoppable force of energy and motivation that I think, for most people is enough to overcome any fear or obstacle that you may encounter.
I've actually got this quote. I'm going to try and find it very quickly, right? I actually heard it off of Gary V. I wrote it down, but I wrote it down in a different way to what he said it. And you know what? I can't think for life of me how he said it. And he said it in such a funny way. But I wrote this quote in a different way. Okay, so bear with me. But I wrote this down as saying, so often you hear people say, I can't do that because it's not guaranteed to work. Right. So obviously, regardless of the situation, like just put that into a situation. I could say about this now, like, oh, I'm not gonna win worlds. I'm Dean, sort of thing. Or what you then say that actually what people really mean when they say that is, I don't want to do anything out my comfort zone that's gonna make me have to work harder than I have before, and then take the risk of looking stupid when it doesn't go to plan. And I'd say I took it from something that Gary Vee said, but I made it into my own thing. But that's ultimately what so often people do, don't they? They say they don't want to do something because it's not guaranteed to work. But actually, the deep core of it is you just don't want to do something because you're going to have to work harder, and then you've got that risk of it not working anyway. There's a quote somewhere, isn't there, that actually concludes that? And I can't remember the exact quote, but basically it's on about saying that if you don't ever do it, then you never know what you achieve anyway. So then you're going to stay in that position forever.
Right. You can't. I mean, and this is unfortunately the paradox of purpose is that, you oftentimes people are, when you're stuck in this loop, the desire to break the mold and to try and, fulfill said purpose is infinitely more frightening than anything you could have done in the mold and in the loop. And the only means in which you can, do that is to go all out and all in, right? Yeah. It's like again, I'm gonna be a quote machine again, but Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of my absolute favorite quotes is, you can't climb the ladder of success with your hands in your pockets. You have to do something completely if you want to do it, right? And I think the fear that comes along with that is that what makes this purpose valid is your belief in it. So if that does not become true, then it undermines the belief that existed before. It makes you question whether it's real or not. And that can be very difficult for someone to, try and wrap their head around, especially if they've committed something to it, Yeah. But I think, and I don't wish to be overly cliche, but I do believe that once you've done this work and you've understood yourself and your why, and again, previous episodes, right? You've come to that point where purpose is clear, right? And all you need to now do is create the momentum in order to make it a reality. You just know there is an intuitive feeling of rightness. And I believe personally that if you continue to take those steps forward, that it will fall into place inevitably. Yeah. And I think this is more on like on a general life kind of perspective than specifically to training, because there are definitely more variables in training, but I still think it applies to training as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. But we will have to wrap there. I think there's been a lot of nuggets that people can take away today anyway. And hopefully, for everyone that's listened to this, you can find more of a reason behind things of what you do. But the thing is that I would always, give people the idea of is like always explore because there's always more you can give and always more you can find within yourself when you start to explore, the world and yourself that a little bit more.
Right. You're only doing yourself a disservice by staying in your comfort zone ultimately. And the comfort zone, I think, first applies to introspection. That is the first stopping point where people flag.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. But guys, we will love you and leave you. Hope you enjoyed this session today. But we will be back at some point very soon, and we'll catch you all very soon.
Take care, everyone.
Peace out.